As the pace of technological innovations quickens, mergers and acquisitions appear to be providing a fast track for companies to accelerate product roadmaps, gain access to new tech and new markets, and fend off the competition. In 2017, the technology, media, and telecommunications industry recorded an all-time high of close to 3,400 M&A transactions globally, worth a total of nearly $500 billion. Some of these deals involved well-funded unicorns, companies that are valued at more than $1 billion. So while these transactions can yield big dividends, they clearly present unique challenges. On today's episode of User Friendly, we'll dive into the hurdles that a company must overcome to conduct successful deals in the TMT industry. Welcome to User Friendly. Hello, this is Heidi Rataj, and today I'm joined by Marco Sguazzin and Joost Krikhaar, two of Deloitte's preeminent M&A leaders for technology, media, and telecommunications. Marco and Joost, welcome to the show.
Hello, Heidi. Thanks for having us on.
Hey, Heidi. Excited to be here with you and talk today about unicorns and M&A.
You recently published a paper that discusses M&A transactions involving unicorns. Joost, can you briefly explain the terminology here?
Well, we all became familiar with the term unicorn, the startup company that's valued at $1 billion or more. And in the early 2000s, actually not that long ago, this was almost an elusive goal, to be a startup funded by private money, yet topping $1 billion in valuation. Whereas now, estimates of company having achieved this status runs in the hundreds. TechCrunch currently estimates that there are 278 unicorns in existence, with an estimated value of just shy of $1 trillion. And as unicorns became more valuable, we now even introduced a new term called a decacorn for unicorns that have a value over $10 billion. What's important for today is that the number of unicorns has risen, and the IPO market challenging over the last few years. And as a result, we're starting to see more unicorns become part of an acquisition. And that's what our paper was about. So we reflected a little bit on what's different about unicorns and acquisitions and integrations, and how do you think about that?
It seems that companies pursue mergers and acquisitions for a lot of reasons: to acquire specific technologies, to access new markets, broaden a product or service portfolio, and of course to gain new talent. Many of these transactions, though, can be doomed from the start. Marco, could you explain this phenomenon?
Most of these transactions eventually fall short of their expectations. The single biggest factor for this is that management didn't really understand the drivers of value in their respective deals.
Where would they fall short?
I think one really has to enter the M&A lifecycle with the end goal in mind and use that to inform every decision that you will ultimately take in the integration process that goes forward from there. You really need to ask yourself, what is the investment thesis? What are we in fact trying to achieve? What is the value proposition that presents itself with this unique acquisition? And can we ultimately articulate it in a manner that everyone can understand and therefore line up behind and execute upon? I'd say those are really the key. If you're able to focus on those, you're on a great start to your integration journey.
So how can these mistakes be avoided?
Well, I think Marco sort of alluded to what really the key to the solution is, which is unpack the deal rationale. There is a reason why a unicorn, or quite frankly any acquisition, it's just that unicorns are a special breed of companies. Why a buyer is interested in adding that unicorn to the portfolio. And if you're able to unpack that deal rationale to value drivers and understand what really matters to create value, that is the path to understanding what to do with that unicorn and how to treat that organization. Now, obviously, there's many other elements to keep an eye out for: culture and how the unicorn came about, and leadership, and there's a lot to be said about the unicorns. But the start of the point is what Marco alluded to, which is start with the end in mind.
In terms of these different types of acquisitions, can you talk a little bit about how these deals are different in nature?
Tech and talent tends to refer to smaller startup acquisitions that typically gets acquired for either technology that the company has developed or is developing, or a small group of people that have very advanced level of thinking and knowledge about a particular product or market or solution, or a combination. And often the customer base and the revenue volume of this type of startup is small, and oftentimes not the focus of the acquisition. The acquirer quickly assimilates the people and the product into their roadmap and their organization, and oftentimes not even cares that much about the potential early revenue or early customers. We see that happening in sort of the next wave of growth, cognitive computing, machine learning, artificial intelligence. On the other side, the unicorns tend to be a little bit more strategic in nature, where the acquired organization has already a proven business model, be able to rapidly grow, hence the high valuation, comes with a substantial customer base, with an ecosystem of sometimes partners, channel partners, or companies that add value in the ecosystem to the unicorn. And after the acquisition, the unicorn continues to operate. Sooner or later, the acquirer will need to decide what to do with the unicorn and how to best integrate the unicorn or allow it to operate autonomously.
Marco, in terms of the acquisitions of unicorns, what are some of the tips for addressing these kinds of challenges?
The expectations on unicorns are often quite different. They come with lofty growth expectations. They often come with a singular or a homogeneous vision, or they come with a business model that differs from the acquiring company. How do you add those assets of the buyer to those unique strengths so that you can accelerate their progress? Moving through this integration process goes back to really understanding what you're buying and why you're buying it, where value will be created, and then trying to create a unique integration strategy.
In the unicorn paper, you described this specific framework addressing the integration dilemma that arises in purchasing of unicorns. What are some specific examples of how this framework has been applied in the real world?
I think this framework basically maps an acquisition on two different axes. The first axis being how similar the two companies are in size and how similar their respective business models are. For example, if you consider smaller acquisitions of the tech and talent type, you have typically a large disparity in size, but often similar business models. And as such, these integrations are less complex because integration of the target company will simply be the adoption of the acquirer's processes. But when you have a large similarity in size and a dissimilarity in business models, you're now dealing with the proverbial merger of equals and a clash of business models. And in this example, it isn't really clear what the eventual organization will look like when you first set out. We often map transactions on these two axes, and for us that helps categorize the acquisition into a few different archetypes: a tech and talent deal, or a bolt-on type of deal, or a consolidation type of deal, or perhaps even a transformation type of deal.
I thought we could play a quick rapid-fire game, 30-second debate.
Let's get it on.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds to present your side of the argument. Joost, we'll start with you. Why is integration a better play? Timer starts now.
I'll give you three simple reasons. One, a unicorn is not a collector's item. To meet the strategic reasons and earn back the purchase premium, the acquirer will have to do something to make unicorn grow faster than it did by itself. Two, synergies do not happen by themselves. It takes work, smart integration. Third, once the unicorn is caught, it's not independent anymore. It needs a new goal to achieve growth. And the acquirer will have to replace autonomy with a new vision that brings the question, so what now?
All right, Marco, handing it over to you. Tell us why autonomy is best.
Number one, I think the acquired company may be smothered by the larger acquiring company's processes or bureaucracy or overheads or slowness. The second reason, it can be very hard to mix newly acquired business models into the fabric of an established company. Buyers simply don't have the capability to manage different business models very often. Another reason is the acquired unicorn more often than not has a very different culture than the acquirer. Typically, it follows and is very loyal to its evangelical founder and the mission, and culture is notoriously hard to integrate. And maybe lastly, the unicorns are typically structured for speed. Decisions are fast, R&D is very focused and fast. The whole structure is set up for speed and agility, and that can really be matched by large acquirers.
Excellent. Great job, gentlemen, on both parts. I will give a little bit more credit to Joost, who did finish his answer in 30 seconds. Marco, you're a little over by 12 seconds, but that's okay. It's our first game, and I really appreciate your participation. So we'll do a little ding-ding for the time period. Well done. So moving back to our show, of course, there is an alternative to acquiring a company. You can invest in a unicorn instead of acquiring it. Marco, would you talk about the benefits of this approach versus an outright acquisition?
It preserves the agility, it preserves the focus, it preserves the incentive and the independence that has created value up until that point for the unicorn. So you definitely retain that. It also provides a way to place multiple bets if one needs strategic flexibility in the marketplace. In an acquisition, you're basically placing one bet, but with investments, you can place multiple bets and see which ones really pan out. And it can often be a more acceptable move to a company's ecosystem partners. It may not redraw the lines of competition very much. It doesn't upset the ecosystem quite as much as an outright acquisition.
Joost, final thoughts about the benefits of this approach versus an outright acquisition.
Unicorns exist in, at least in M&A landscape. Acquisitions are here to stay. What we're doing here is try to provide a perspective and a framework about the challenges of bridging the different business models, the one vision that the unicorn brings, the passion that the employees bring to the larger organization that the buyer has, rather than you own a unicorn and leave it alone and hope it continues to grow. What do you do with these unicorns? And we have to continue to think about this with this framework, how to tackle it.
Before I turn over to closing remarks, Marco, did you have any final thoughts?
Despite arguing the do not integrate case, at the end of the day, I actually do believe that in the long run, integration is better than not integrating. Not integrating just simply leads to incompatible systems, incompatible technologies, no economies of scale. Integration is often best done in a way that is unique to that particular deal, where only certain elements are integrated at first, and those are typically those that create value when measured against the original deal thesis.
That wraps up this episode of User Friendly, your go-to podcast to navigate new trends in tech, media, and telecom. I want to thank my guests, Marco Sguazzin and Joost Krikhaar, for sharing their insights on mergers and acquisitions, or how to care for your unicorn.
Thanks very much, Heidi, and thank you, Joost. Always a pleasure to share ideas with you.
Yes, thanks, and looking forward to continuing the conversation on or off podcast.
Join us for the rest of Season 2 as we cover everything from artificial intelligence to the future of home entertainment to the continued digital revolution. Thanks for joining us.